Peace is not uncomfortable for everyone. For many, peace feels like relief, like exhaling after a long day, like the nervous system settling back into balance. But for some, peace feels very different. For some, peace feels like suffocation. Stillness feels like erasure. Harmony feels like danger. And whenever calm appears, something must disturb it. There is a pattern that repeats itself across human experience. It appears in personal relationships, in families, in workplaces, in social structures, in entire chapters of history. Chaos. Not the creative chaos of discovery, not the fertile disorder that precedes growth, but the chaos that fractures, that destabilizes, that exhausts. Why does this pattern emerge so persistently? Why are some individuals and some systems seemingly drawn to turbulence, to tension, to disruption? To understand this, we must look beneath behavior, beneath ideology, beneath surface narratives. We must look into something quieter, something more structural. The architecture of identity itself. A deeply narcissistic psyche is not defined simply by arrogance, nor by vanity, nor by exaggerated self-importance. At its core, narcissism is a stability strategy, a psychological structure built to defend a fragile internal world. Behind displays of certainty, behind confidence, behind dominance or charm, there is often fragmentation, emotional instability, contradictions that cannot be reconciled, a sense of self that lacks inner continuity, where a grounded identity experiences a stable inner landscape. The narcissistic structure experiences noise, restlessness, unsettled emotional currents, a constant internal movement that never quite resolves. Emotions rise without anchoring, thoughts spiral without integration. Identity becomes something that must be continuously reinforced rather than naturally inhabited. And here a profound dynamic begins to unfold. The external world becomes not merely an environment, but a regulatory mechanism. Human beings are not passive observers of reality. We shape our experiences through perception, interpretation, expectation, emotional memory. But more than that, we often recreate externally what we cannot stabilize internally. For a psyche defined by inner turbulence, peace does not always feel comforting. Peace can feel alien, unfamiliar, even threatening. Because peace is not simply the absence of noise. Peace is psychological stillness. Peace reduces distraction. Peace slows reaction cycles. Peace increases visibility. Peace reveals. In stillness, internal movement becomes noticeable. In quiet environments, unresolved tension can no longer hide behind constant stimulation. In harmony, distortions become more visible. In calm relational spaces, defensive patterns lose camouflage. For a fragmented structure, peace is not relief. Peace is exposure. Chaos, by contrast, feels different. Chaos is stimulating, absorbing, distracting. Chaos generates movement. Chaos generates reaction. Chaos generates noise. And noise provides cover. Chaos outside feels strangely familiar to chaos inside. It matches the internal landscape. It confirms the worldview. It normalizes instability. And so something subtle occurs. Chaos becomes psychologically regulating. Disturbance restores familiarity. Conflict restores stimulation. Tension restores internal alignment. The environment begins to mirror the psyche, not through conscious design, but through instinctive behavioral patterns. Drama emerges where there was calm. Conflict appears where there was connection. Instability interrupts stability, not always from calculated malice, often from unconscious regulation. Because chaos feels like home to a mind that has never known inner quiet. But this pattern does not remain confined to individuals. The same dynamics can scale into systems, into institutions, into structures of power, into ideologies. Systems, like individuals, possess organizing principles. They stabilize themselves through feedback loops, through reinforcement mechanisms, through structural habits. A system grounded in coherence fosters adaptability, integration, distributed stability, resilience. A system grounded in fear and domination stabilizes differently, through control, through hierarchy, through suppression, through perpetual threat perception. Control, unlike coherence, requires instability. Control needs something to manage, something to suppress, something to defend against. Peace, therefore, presents a structural challenge. Peace stabilizes perception. Peace reduces fear-driven reactivity. Peace increases awareness. Peace enables reflection. Peace enables autonomy. Autonomy reduces dependency. Awareness reduces manipulatability. Clarity destabilizes distortion-based authority. History offers countless illustrations of this dynamic. When domination-oriented systems rise, what is disrupted first? Culture, art, language, customs, meaning itself. These are rarely accidental targets. They are coherence engines. Culture stabilizes collective identity. Art expands imagination. Language shapes perception. Shared customs generate continuity. Meaning generates orientation. These elements reduce psychological dependency on imposed order. They strengthen internal regulation within individuals and communities. They generate what might be called collective grounding. Grounded populations require less control. Coherent identities resist manipulation. Stable meaning structures weaken fear-based governance. And so fragmentation becomes strategy. Divide, destabilize, confuse, maintain tension. What appears political often reflects deeper psychological parallels. Just as an unstable psyche recreates chaos to regulate itself, unstable systems may perpetuate chaos to preserve control. Persistent tension justifies authority concentration. Perceived instability legitimizes intervention. Fear stabilizes hierarchy. Confusion weakens resistance. Chaos becomes functional. At both psychological and systemic levels, chaos performs similar roles. Chaos distracts. Chaos fragments attention. Chaos sustains reactivity. Chaos prevents reflection. Chaos prevents stabilization. Chaos keeps perception scattered. And scattered perception is easier to influence. But beneath this entire dynamic lies a profound misunderstanding. Chaos is often mistaken for power. Chaos feels powerful because it dominates attention, because it generates movement, because it produces intensity, because it provokes reaction. Yet structurally, chaos is dependency. Chaos requires constant stimulation, constant conflict, constant activation, constant fragmentation of attention and emotional energy. Chaos cannot sustain itself without fuel. Peace, by contrast, operates differently. Peace stabilizes. Peace integrates. Peace regulates. Peace conserves energy. Peace enables clarity. Peace enables continuity. Peace is not passive. Peace is structurally transformative. Peace reorganizes nervous systems. Peace reorganizes perception. Peace reorganizes relational dynamics. Peace reorganizes power structures. Peace reduces the need for external regulation through conflict. Peace strengthens internal regulation through coherence. And this is precisely why peace can feel intolerable to structures dependent on instability. There exists, at the heart of this dynamic, one final paradox. Narcissistic individuals often seek admiration, strength, recognition, influence. Control systems often pursue order, dominance, superiority, permanence. Yet both struggle profoundly in the presence of genuine inner stability. True coherence, true groundedness, true clarity. Authentic strength exposes defensive strength. Authentic stability reveals artificial stability. Authentic clarity dissolves distortion. Where authenticity stands, manipulation weakens. Where clarity rises, inflation collapses. Where inner solidity exists, distortion loses its stage. What cannot be embodied becomes threatening. What cannot be integrated becomes destabilizing. What cannot be controlled becomes intolerable. And so disruption emerges again. What cannot be mirrored peacefully must be destabilized chaotically. Yet here quietly lies the most liberating insight of all. Peace is not weakness. Peace is neurological strength. Peace is psychological stability. Peace is perceptual clarity. Peace is functional coherence. Peace is the condition under which creativity expands, under which empathy deepens, under which intelligence stabilizes, under which resilience strengthens. Peace is the environment where identity no longer requires inflation, where power no longer requires domination, where stability no longer requires chaos. And perhaps most importantly, peace is not something granted. Peace is something cultivated, built, embodied, sustained. What disturbs peace often reveals more about inner fragmentation than external reality, more about structural instability than objective necessity, which leads to something quietly empowering. You do not have to become chaotic to survive chaos. You can become grounded. You can become clear. You can become internally stable enough that turbulence no longer dictates your state of understanding and responsibility.